How you doing? This is YellowTape. I'm your host, Morande Dixon. This one is truly a special one. First up, shout out to the producer Kev Cheng for edits and podcast management. Thank you, sir. This episode is installment number 18. 18 is special, especially if you're a Kenyan, is when you become a grown-up. Well, you can now go partying. It's also a lucky number among the Jew. I bet you didn't know that horses have 18 pairs of ribs and 18 bones in their tails. Enough of 18 obsessions. Today's guest is Mr. Dirk-Jan Koeman. In this installment, we feature clips also from a webinar session held by the Lawyers Hub. Lawyers Hub is a community of lawyers in Africa promoting access to justice through innovation and technology. Any queries, suggestions, or if you are looking to partner with them, email them at info@lawyershub.co.ke. For more information, visit their website, lawyershub.org. Before we proceed any further, I have just one question. Do you really think unlimited data is truly unlimited?
acute.co.ke.
At the start of 2021, Safaricom announced changes to their home fiber product. They doubled their speeds, but there was introduction of a fair usage policy. Once you reach a certain usage limit for any of their packages, the speeds will be reduced for the remaining part of the subscription. So usually subscription will be a month long. So assuming you are on a bronze package and you've reached a certain the limit set, then your speeds will be reduced from 8 Mbps to 1 Mbps. DJ takes us back to the start of the pandemic with this breakdown.
Safaricom have got their three or four packages, yes. Right? So they're bronze,
and
silver,
platinum,
gold,
yes.
and platinum, whatever it is. So, yes. And their bronze package, when they launched, so pre-COVID, was 5 megabits per second,
yes,
unlimited, isn't it? For 2,900 bob.
That's correct.
So then during COVID, as a token of appreciation to facilitate working from home, etc., they doubled the speeds of all their packages. So the bronze package went from 5 to 10 megabits per second, and the silver package went from 10 to 20 megabits per second. And kept the prices the same, for which I am eternally grateful. Don't get me wrong, because besides an entrepreneur, I'm also still a human being and a consumer. Yes, and I don't mind plugging, say, our competitor. And in all fairness, we're not competing with Safaricom because, as you now understand, say, home internet is a different kettle of fish than mobile internet. So it's a different use case altogether. So I've been working in the industry, as you know, for a long, long time. So we have this joke, which is people snack on their mobile and dine on their TV. You know, small screen is for snacking.
Yeah.
Big screen is for full dinner,
yes.
3-course dinner. So it's a completely different use case altogether. And again, so Safaricom Home Fiber goes into Lavington, Westie, and South Sea, and those areas. We go in Kibera, Kawangware, Ungemi. So Ungemi, I think is the proper Sheng expression for Kangemi.
Yes, that's correct.
and your mta is Kibich.
Kibich, number 9.
Yeah, number 9. So we're not competing. We're almost complementary, I would argue. Yes. We both serve a purpose, and we both serve our own captive audience, so to speak. So Safaricom Home Fiber, their bronze package, previously 5 megabits per second, then during COVID went to 10 megabits per second. People were, especially in the early days, so talking between April and August, so when the restrictions, the curfew, etc., and the directives with regards to working from home were the strictest and most restrictive. That's when Safaricom Home Fiber bumped it up to 10 megabits per second. Their bronze package average consumption per month was 200 gigabytes.
Okay.
So 200 gigabytes. Now imagine, so 4G user, 700 megabytes.
Yes.
Home internet,
200.
the lowest package, 200 gigabytes. That's almost 300 times as much.
Yes.
300 times as much. So different ball game altogether. Since then, so since beginning of March, they have reduced the speed from 10 megabits per second to 8 megabits per second.
That's correct.
And they have introduced this fair usage policy. The fair usage policy for the bronze package is 500 gigabytes. That is 2.5 times as much as the average consumption. 2.5 times. So that is, say, on a global level, that is very, very generous. And this fair usage policy there, so what the gentleman of Safaricom Home Fiber also mentioned is this, it's under permanent review. So it's not something that they decide once and it will be 500 gig until eternity. No, they will most likely, as most operators across the planet do, they will review on a quarterly basis or on a semi-annual basis, and they will see whether across that package, across the bronze package, average consumption has increased, and they will adjust their fair usage policy accordingly to facilitate the vast majority of the people. Because the FUP is designed, and it's the tool for network operators across the planet to make sure that the majority of the people on that package actually can enjoy a good customer experience. So it's not punitive, it's facilitating. It is to make sure that you deliver a good quality of service and therefore a good customer experience. Because irrespective how you slice it and dice it, a network topology, a network structure, is a forked structure where you start at the top, which is, say, in the Safaricom data center, big pipes towards the submarine cables. And from there you fork out your network across your different areas. But at any given point, at any given intersection, it is always a shared connection. And that's what is called the contention ratio. So your pipe, you're still sharing with other people. It's not 100% end-to-end dedicated, because if you make it end-to-end dedicated, the price
will go up
for the end consumer goes
up.
up. Let's assume, for argument's sake, that right now wholesale pricing for internet, so from the internet suppliers, because Safaricom doesn't produce internet themselves, right? Neither do we. We are a reseller. So we get the internet from third parties. Because the internet, although the World Wide Web, although the icon is drawn as a cloud, it's not that you point your device towards the clouds and that's where you get the internet from.
That's correct.
In fact, the internet is the most wired business on the planet. So it's not wireless by any stretch of the imagination. And the internet is still, by far and large, is a whole bunch of data centers, mostly in the US and Europe, where all these applications and all this content is hosted. Thankfully, more and more content is hosted locally, so there is therefore less latency and less dependency on all these expensive submarine cables. But Safaricom, JTL, Airtel, ourselves, we all get our internet from upstream providers, from wholesale internet suppliers. And in the case of Safaricom, I would argue they'll probably buy it directly from Teams, Seacom, and all these submarine cables. So the submarine cable internet providers. So let's assume, for argument's sake, that they buy their internet dedicated, because they will have dedicated internet being brought into their data center, and that the wholesale price is $10 per megabit per second. It used to be. So when we started our business in 2016, we had to buy our internet for $100 per megabit per second. So when we
Okay.
provided our first public Wi-Fi hotspots, including the one on top of Tuna Panda in the Pamoja FM tower, the internet that we bought was $100 per megabit per second. So
A
that's
second.
10 Gs.
That's quite a lot. That's
Yes.
quite a lot compared to right
Yes.
now. It's only 1,000.
So that price has come down. Yeah. So that price has come down tremendously. Reasons being twofold. One, more and more competition. Two, it is the law of Moore's law, where it becomes cheaper and cheaper over time. And because, of course, there is more and more consumption. So if you buy in 10 megabits per second at a time, or you buy in 100 megabits per second at a time, you have more negotiation power, of course. If I buy in bulk, I can negotiate better rates than when I buy small, Kadogo. So if Safaricom buys it at $10 per megabits per second, would you be, and they also need to eat themselves because they need to provide their own infrastructure, right? And that infrastructure, guess what? They will need to make, they want to make that back. They want to make a coin. So if they were to price it $15 per megabits per second, so that means that if you have a dedicated connection into your house that only you can use all the way up to the submarine cable, would you be willing to pay for 5 megabits per second? So their bronze package, 7.5 Gs.
Wow, no, that's quite for most
Staki.
users.
Exactly. So by doing this contention, by sharing these connections more upstream, so not at the end user point, but say further down the stream, by sharing it, by contending it, you make it affordable for the majority of the people, because not everyone will use the internet at the same time. Unless, of course, there is, and that's where actually the rubber meets the road, where people resell their internet connection. So they get the bronze package in their house, the 5 megabits per second, the 10 megabits per second, and they start chopping it up, and they are connecting their neighbors. And then when, of course, there is a Man U Premier League match being streamed live on a Sunday afternoon,
everyone is streaming.
Everybody is crying in the building,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah. Because the connection is Kufa. It is proper Kufa because there is more people using it than theoretically possible.
Yes.
So this fair usage policy is to assist the network operator to provide the best possible experience for the vast majority of the customers. The only people that are being punished are exactly the people that I was just describing. So the people that are reselling and cutting up their internet connection.
Something
now that, for these people, for these entrepreneurs, there is alternatives. They may not like it, but if you're these are businesses, they're not individuals. They are using a consumer product for business purposes. Guess what? If you're an entrepreneur, if you're in business, look at all the different elements. Safaricom also offers business packages. These business packages do not have the fair usage policy. So they are truly uncapped. They're unlimited. Yes, they are a bit more expensive. That is absolutely true. But if you cut up your connection and you serve 5 of your neighbors and you charge every neighbor a G, that means that 5K is coming in. Now, that is, of course, nice if you don't pay 2.9, so you keep 2 Gs in your pocket. But if you have another connection that is actually providing better quality, you can charge more to your end customer.
And provide better service.
And still make a healthy coin. Yes.
Okay. I get that now that you have actually basically almost answered all the questions that I had, which I truly appreciate because then, yes, I mean, you're an entrepreneur, so you're trying to I'm just something that came up when you're speaking about these reseller packages, the people who are becoming entrepreneurs on top of Safaricom's at the Safaricom's expense. Someone
Mhm.
might argue that they're basically also trying to democratize the service. They're trying to ensure that everyone is able to access. And I know you mentioned that yes, companies will still have business packages where they can get that business package and share it. Then someone else might argue the case whereby we stay within the same locality. Then we decide let's take a 5 MB per second package and share
Yeah.
it amongst our three neighbors. What would be wrong with such a situation? Because now it feels like the fair
Mhm.
use policy is also targeting similar people. Who are making that kind of arrangement. Like you said, people in Kibera might not be able to afford the bronze package. But if three people staying together decide, okay, let's try to take up this cost and share it. Don't you see like they're being punished by this fair use policy?
Yeah, I see your point. There is no easy answer to that. Um, the, um, Most
Mm,
internet service providers across the planet. I've worked in various countries, both developed markets
mhm,
as well as lesser developed markets. Um, but say most of the ISPs still have a traditional model, and the traditional model is I have a consumer proposition, and it is therefore say tailored towards say, ACP, so a
mhm,
router in someone's home, and that home is confined to that home, and that router is providing the internet for
okay.
that home. It is not the intention that
Mhm,
that router then has say three additional routers with wires plugged into it, and all of a sudden it serves four homes. Because guess what? I
okay.
have my business proposition that is slightly more upmarket, so it's a bit more expensive, but probably comes with a couple of additional bells and whistles. So there is
Mhm,
no capping of data, there is no throttling, and it's less contention, so it's a higher quality bandwidth that is being provided. So it's shared with less people upstream, so to speak, and that is better suited for this type of entrepreneurial behavior.
mhm,
I think the the whole so that's how traditional
okay.
ISPs operate, and that's to some extent also what Safaricom and JTL and Zuku are replicating. So they're not doing anything much different from what you see on the rest of the planet. However, I think where the rubber meets the road, where it becomes a
Mm,
friction point, is that it clearly shows that
yeah.
in Kenya, to some extent, the model is broken, and broken to the extent that the internet, so fixed home internet, is still prohibitive in costing, and therefore um, sharing is for a lot of people the only way to actually to be able to afford their internet
Internet. Yeah.
connection,
Mhm,
even when they live in the slightly more upmarket areas. And say from an end user
mhm,
perspective, then one could argue, yeah, so that's why this fair usage policy is prohibitive and it's punishing. From a global perspective and from an operator perspective and from a majority of the customers perspective,
mhm,
it is not.
mhm,
Because I think, and again, I don't work for Safaricom. I don't have access to their network
mhm,
or their boxes or insights, but I'm just trying to reason and to apply logic as I see it also within our network. So I still believe that probably using the Pareto principle, so it's an 80-20 rule.
okay.
I'm fairly certain that 80%, if not more, of their subscriber base, of their customers, are using the internet just for their own home. So it's one CPE in one home used
Okay.
by one family, only the people within the confines of that home. 80% of their base. So what
Mhm,
they're doing is they are introducing something
mhm,
to improve the quality of service for 80% of their customer base. Um, I think as an entrepreneur,
mhm,
you should focus on your majority, not on the outliers. You do have a product for the outliers, which is your business product. If Say, if these people then say, but your business product is too expensive, I can therefore no longer afford. Yeah, that's something that as a company, then you can take into consideration whether you need to adjust so it is more looking at, say, whether you want to adjust your pricing rather than your methodology. Because I think fundamentally to better serve 80% of your customer base is the right thing to do. So from a methodology perspective, I think they're on the right track. Whether it is still prohibitive pricing for a subset of their customer base, that's something that they may take into consideration. Having said that, of course, right now I'm preaching for my own approach. That's where, say, POA comes in. So we operate in markets where we understand that people are sharing. We don't mind, because our mission, our vision is to connect every home in Africa eventually. So the more the merrier. If together with these tech-savvy hustlers, with these entrepreneurial minds, we can come up with a method, a way that all of us benefit. So there is the end user, so that has a package that is, say, affordable for them. The tech-savvy hustler in the middle is making a coin, and we in return are making a coin. Then it all works fine. But you must understand that if one CPE, in our case, only generates 1,500 shillings, and it's being maxed out, then all of a sudden, A, it may provide a poor experience for the people who are sharing that connection, and B, eventually we as a business are no longer sustainable.
That's true. I think these are one of the... This feels like a good moment to switch gears and get to hear a few sentiments from panelists at the Lawyers Hub webinar. The panel consisted of Mr. Franklin Ocharo from Safaricom, Ben Roberts from Liquid Telecom, Liz Orembo from Kiktanet, and Robin Busolo, a representative from the Communication Authority of Kenya. First off, we will start with Franklin Ocharo. He is the head of Home and Consumer IoT at Safaricom, and we wanted to get some of the reason why this policy was introduced.
Good overview is given on the case, case against fair use policy, and just immediately address say the elephant in the room with the new policies that we just announced a few weeks ago. So just going back to what has been highlighted, the case for fair use is largely on the customer experience, to ensure that we're able to deliver a great service to customers without a few users hogging the network, thereby impacting the experience of other users. And for this is based on how we've designed the network. We've designed the network to serve a certain number of users, and there's anticipated traffic that we expect to come from it. What happens is when you have one or few users generating abnormal traffic, then in essence, it affects the other users along the line. So what we've done in setting up a fair use policy is putting it at a limit that, having observed the usage of our customers, especially during the pandemic when we saw usage really go up, we looked at what point we believe a normal user can consume for the different packages if they're just doing their normal home office services. So for example, in the case of a student who's consuming that service, we've taken that assumption and seen they're on a video streaming server and they can do a bit of entertainment, then seeing they won't reach that fair use policy, and that's what we've used to set that limit. So the objective is not to limit customers, but in essence, to make sure we can provide great experience to all our customers. Second, why it has come at this point is when you're giving more speeds, it provides more opportunity for what I'd call redistribution of the service. And we also observed this when we doubled the speeds last year. And that's why, to make sure that we don't tell you now have higher speeds, then you experience worse experience because of the possibility of more traffic being injected into the network, we try to arrive at a position that can enable customers get these services better. Lastly, I'll talk on the business aspect of offering this service. And to point to that, looking at the numbers Victor just presented, in perspective, based on the 2019, the latest census we've had, we are covered just 3% of the households, all the operators put together. We are just at 3% coverage. Even if we say, let's knock off all households without electricity, it's just 6% coverage. So we are still a long way we still have a long way to go to providing fixed internet to households in this country. So how do we motivate investment in this sector? Motivating investment, we need to look at whether the providers can get a fair return based on the investment that has been made into it. And that's where reselling becomes an issue, because when you put out an investment, you connect, say, an apartment block of 50 homes, then 3 users take the top package and rewire the rest of the apartment block, then it means you are getting very little compared to what you expected out of it. And in turn, this then hinders continued investment out of this. And what you'd want is a balance between that. How do you have an ecosystem where you can offer the service, get a fair return out of it, which will then motivate investment and even attract more players into this country to connect homes? And that's why we look at the issue of reselling as bad for the industry as a whole, and not an issue that would just affect us. It will not just affect us directly.
As you can imagine, most Kenyans had a different view, and Liz Orembo from Kiktanet shared a different angle on the topic.
But that's not it. What I'm going to say here is my own my own views, and not for any organization. Now, to be fair, ISPs, just like any other private company, are in this business to make profit. That means it has to make money sense at the end of the day. And when you are talking about fair usage policies, let's not just talk about the big players like Safaricom, Zuku, the ones who have already big shares in the market. But let's also talk about the small players, the ones who buy huge limited bandwidth from Akina Ben, and then they sell it to others. Some call them internet mutu, but some are just legit businesses. So yeah, and these players have been so important in the industry because they've also improved access, especially where the big players have done their studies and actually determined that it would not make a good business sense for them to distribute or to reach out their services in those areas. So they've actually come in and actually proven to these other big players that everyone actually has a thirst for unlimited internet. So when you look at Nairobi areas, usually it's first the small players who come in, and then after the market has grown, then you start seeing the bigger players now coming into to get into that share of the market. So we should also look beyond, and also when we are talking about these policies, also cover how these small players also covered in the fair usage policies, because most of these customers of the small players are also affected by the bandwidth, and usually they don't have these policies to regulate. So you find problems like network outage. So someone is using heavy bandwidth, and it's usually even a challenge for them. So yeah, the way everyone has just presented here, I think Safaricom, Zuku, and Telcom, Liquid Telecom, usually do a study before they come up with the capping of their internet. And let's say a household uses 350 gigs, the way you've just presented at Lawyers Hub, but that will also mean that the 3,000 package for the Safaricom will not fit for very many households. That will mean that for most households, they'll have to go for the higher packages. First, is that affordable for all the for most households in Kenya? Number two is fair usage policies punishes all users. The other thing that, the other alternative, which has also been laid out here and also Zuku uses, is to automatically detect the ones who are heavy bandwidth user and proactively cap their usage. And there are some concerns with this because, of course, there'll be privacy implications to that, and that's why the likes of Safaricom will put a blanket fair usage policy for everyone. That doesn't mean that that all users are punished. Just in case you go beyond that cap, that's when you'll have the throttling. So to that point, I've supported the private sector. Where I'll not really support them is how they develop the fair usage policies and how they implement them. It's a bit similar to what WhatsApp did. They knew that they had a bigger market share. They've had a bait for the users, and now they just give you policies on your face and with immediate effect. And they know that you can't opt out because you're heavily relying on that service, which is a very bad approach from an ethics point of view. When you're signing into a contract, you should have a reasonable amount of time for you to change into the other terms of that contract you're signing to, and you should also have consent. So to this case, there's no informed consent as per the from the user's point of view, because for example, in Safaricom, the policies are changing by March. And that means if you're a subscriber in the middle of the month, then what options do you have, even if you're a heavy bandwidth user? Yeah, so I don't think there was consumer information and just consent from that end, and that would be and that would raise a lot of ethical questions in it. Again, I think this one Ben mentioned in one of the conversations, I think on LinkedIn, that we still don't have infrastructure in place for heavy bandwidth user. And that really speaks a lot when it comes to the next generations of technologies and usage, things like 5G and IoT. That's something that you can look into by the regulator, and even, of course, with assistance from the industry. Yeah, I think that's it.
We needed to hear what the Communication Authority, the governing body that is in charge of telcos in Kenya, had to say. And Robin Busolo, being the representative, shared his perspective on this particular new introduction of the fair use policy.
I work with the Communications Authority. Indeed, it's a great pleasure to receive communications from my Director General, Mrs. Masio. It's been a concern that this is indeed a key issue. As a regulator, I'll just give a brief overview of what Communications Authority is before I delve into the key issue that is under discussion today. Communications Authority is a regulator, is a statutory body set up under the Kenya Information and Communications Act, which was set up in 1998. It has a broad mandate spanning various responsibilities, regulating radio communications, which is a subject matter of discussion here, postal and courier services, cybersecurity, broadcasting, and beyond these key subsectors that are under regulation, within the purview of regulation, we manage competition within the ICT sector, and naturally, within regulation of competition, we have the interests of the consumers of ICTs in mind. So the Communications Authority, again, has an important mandate in protecting the interests of the consumers. Why is it important that the subject of ISPs is under the purview of the authority? Indeed, under the licensing function of the Communications Authority, we do license and regulate the telecommunications company. The data companies, Safaricom, we have representation here, and the Aliquid, they're all beyond what we license them through a system called the Unified Licensing Framework, where now they can set up infrastructure and they can set up voice and data services. Beyond that, beyond the infrastructure license, we grant these telecommunications operators what we call an internet service provider's license. And this license, upon successful application, this license comes inherent with terms and conditions therein. Now, once they become successful as internet service providers, they have the license conditions and terms, which beyond now the licensing functions, authority has the mandate of compliance and ensuring that indeed there's conformity with the licensing terms and conditions. So in terms of now the ISPs rolling out the data services to their consumers. We have a tariff regulation mandate as well, where now whatever terms and conditions that they'll enter into with their subscribers, and whatever cost that the internet service provider will deem fit to charge the consumers, as a regulator, it behoves them to now come and file the intended cost with the regulator. So we have a tariff mandate, and it's guided and governed by what is contained in the Kenya Information Communications tariff regulations. So the ISPs have a responsibility to file their tariffs that they intend to charge the consumers with the communication, with the regulator for information. Whenever they file the tariffs or the cost that they intend to charge, it's been practiced that they reserve their rights to amend or change the terms and conditions that that they've entered into the subscribers. So again, when it becomes necessary on the part of the ISP provider to change or amend the terms and conditions that they've entered into the subscriber, there's a procedure again in compliance with the license terms and conditions that they need to file with the Communications Authority, which internally we call a file and use doctrine. So whenever there's a proposed change of any term and condition, in this case, what we are discussing here is fair usage policy, is whenever they intend to change the terms under this doctrine of fair usage, all they need to do is communicate to the regulator the intended change for concurrence and information. You realize that the remit of the authority in terms of interfering with the proposed change is really limited, because the authority does not have, we're not privy to the terms and conditions within which the ISP provider will enter into between the ISP and the licensees. But in the event that the subscriber or the consumer is not happy or feels that the imposed change is detrimental, prejudicial, or unfair, again, within the regulator's consumer protection mandate, they are at liberty to come to the regulator and inform, and basically lodge a complaint, as it were, to the Communications Authority. We have a consumer complaints handling mechanism, where now once such a complaint or concern or observation as to a proposed change of policy is received, then we have internal mechanisms on how we'll ensure that this particular observation, concern, or complaint will be resolved at the end of the day. So it's in that regard that we will ensure that the interests of the consumers are protected, and the interests of our licensees are protected. So to that extent, the authorities' remit cannot go beyond what is contained in the license terms and conditions, and we cannot interfere in the contract between the licensee and the subscriber. But the subscriber, at the end of the day, if he or she feels that is inconvenienced, he needs to approach the licensee as a first port of call. So you cannot ordinarily approach the Communications Authority, the regulator, as a first. If you have plans and that particular mechanism, if you feel unhappy, then come to the authority as a second port of call. Then we'll help as it is. But again, just to touch on what the panelists have said, there's need for consumer awareness on these issues. And so just to mention some key issues, it's important for a consumer to appreciate fair usage and what a data limit is concerned. So there's an issue of a data cap or allowance, which basically is a specific amount of data which you can use in each billing period, with penalties. So there's an appreciation. Consumers need to appreciate distinctions between fair usage and the data limit. And the need further to appreciate that the existence of a data limit should be made very clear when you sign up to a broadband service. There's also need for consumers to appreciate what an acceptable usage is. So there's a doctrine of fair usage and there's a doctrine of acceptable usage. So again, it behoves now our licensees, the internet service providers, to go that extra mile and inform their consumers on these key issues. What is fair usage and what is acceptable usage? And the consumers further need to understand what is the impact of the fair use policy and what happens if you're affected. Then there are some options where you can decide now to either combat an issue like that. You can decide now to either choose an ISP which has unlimited services. So all these things are, from a consumer perspective, is really a discretion issues. And I'll urge our internet service providers to actually do a lot of public awareness and stakeholder engagement with the consumers so that they appreciate this issue.
So, of course, Safaricom buys internet from someone, okay? Like Koeman and the others. And also, we have people who buy internet from Safaricom, then resell it directly. And these are the kind of people who Safaricom is trying to target. Lastly, we will get a bit technical, forgive us for this, with Ben Roberts tackling the resellers.
We, as Liquid Telecom, we haven't got a great deal of fiber to the home in this country, but we've done pretty large deployments of fiber to the home in Zimbabwe, Zambia, Uganda, Rwanda. And, you know, I've been involved in a lot of the high-level planning and strategy behind building out Pan-African network, and also, you know, some of these fiber to the home products. So it's exactly like Franklin has described, I think. But, you know, I want to sort of drill down into sort of some of the underlying principles behind these sharing things that we're talking about. So first of all, it was mentioned at the beginning in the opening presentation around you know, bandwidth being a highly scarce resource. Now, in a radio network like 3G or 4G or you know, satellite networks, the actual bandwidth is linked to a quantity of spectrum, which, you know, is in megahertz, but then you have a certain amount of data that can be delivered in megabits per second. You have what we call efficiency, you know, efficiency of the spectral efficiency and how many megabits you can deliver per megahertz. This is enhanced with you know, cellular infrastructures, and it becomes about how many base stations you put up. So, but ultimately you've got you know, what is a fairly tight and expensive resource. So you have to share that in a different way. So operators tend to share this by selling it by the gigabyte. They sell it by the quantity, just like electricity. If we sell electricity onto a grid, you know, we've got a resource. It's cost us money to generate that resource. So we sell that by the kilowatt hour, by the unit cost. When we get to home broadband fiber, the economics are actually type different. There's two economic factors, right? One is the cost of what we call it, you know, IP transit, international bandwidth, whatever you want to call it. But it's the cost per megabits per second of a bandwidth delivered at the data center by the speed. So there's a common practices in how this is calculated and how they're sold, but we have a certain cost, a wholesale market cost of 1 megabits per second at the major data centers in Nairobi costs. And then we have another piece of economics, which is the last mile economics. In the space of fiber to the home, it's around exactly, I mean, Franklin put it very well when he's talking about motivating investment and getting return on investment. You know, we can't build more, we'd love to build more fiber in Kenya, but we've not found sufficient return on investment to build fiber. This is why we've not built here. Safaricom have ventured into that, and we've done it in other countries. But you know, if you can't get return on investment, you can't carry on building more. And so each property you pass with fixed band or infrastructure costs you a certain amount per house passed. We say per house passed, and then you get an additional incremental amount per house connected. So let's say for each house passed, each house you put fiber to in Kenya, it might cost you around $500, 50,000 shillings for each home passed. Now, if you then pass 1,000 homes and 30% of those homes take up your service, then you've probably got a case for you know, return on investment there, and you can generate an acceptable business. If only 5% of homes take up those service, and you know, some of those just use more bandwidth and sell it to their neighbors, unfortunately, you don't have a business case for reinvestment. So it really kills this thing of resellers reselling on the network. They're not resellers, you know, they are they're buying a product which is designed for an individual, and then they are abusing that product to distribute it, you know, unfairly sharing across the network. They're not encouraging investment. We need, you know, more to be done about this, really. But they don't just resell bandwidth, but they do illegal things. You know, they use KPLC poles, they put their own fiber up, and they do dangerous things. You know, so we've had people cutting into our fiber, running it into KPLC poles illegally, and without any authorization from KPLC. This is a danger to public health. So let's not put these as any guys we want to defend here. I'm here to defend the industry and the broadband industry. And, maybe there were a few, there are some legitimate users who might be heavy users of bandwidth. Particularly video gamers can be higher users than others. They might be playing online. They might be online a lot of the time doing voice calls, video gaming, downloading large downloads. But really they're, the video gamers or families, large families who've got a lot of devices in the home, who mum and dad are watching Netflix while 5 kids are upstairs with their own tablets. They also might be a heavy user using it legitimately. But in the main, as Franklin described, we as operators, we do our homework. We find out what a normal user is going to be using. We set our product with acceptable limits and fair usage policies to cater for their needs. The 1 terabyte that is in these Safaricom packages is quite a lot. It's quite a generous offer. I'm not here to promote my competition, but it is quite a good offer, right? There are a few legitimate users who might use more than 1 TB. I'm probably one of those. I've got 50 or so devices connected in the house, smart TVs, audio systems, smart home, CCTV. I probably use a bit more than a terabyte, but not a lot more. But most people who are using over a terabyte are bad actors. People who are downloading movies to rip them onto DVDs so they can illegally sell DVDs and pirate copies. That's a good example. Resellers is another one. They're mostly people who are doing things that are not within the terms and conditions of the product, not legal things. But I think it is good to have look at what might be some of the legitimate uses, and we do have devices which can do more detailed allocations, so we can allocate more people more bandwidth for Zoom calls. We can allocate people more bandwidth for video gaming. We as operators, we differentiate ourselves by doing different packages in fair ways. Often we don't publish the details of FUPs, and it's been brave of Safaricom to publish their limits, but it's obviously developed some backlash. But I think I'm happy for us to be transparent, and more transparency should be encouraged.
This panel was very insightful, and they provided clear perspectives on what it really means to introduce this fair usage policy. And of course, because we had Ocharo in the panel, people were able to ask questions directly to him and put Safaricom on the spotlight. The whole session is found on the Lawyers Hub YouTube page. I would highly recommend you watching it. Let's switch back to Mr. DJ. I think these are one of the things that came up and most people were trying to argue out was the idea of selling the packages as unlimited. Will it still be considered an unlimited package? Or are the advertising and packages far-fetched? That was something that most Kenyans literally took. It felt like it's a lie to be told that you're being given an unlimited package. Do we really have something like unlimited package? Or would you comment on that?
Yeah, so with the risk of that, we're entering into a debate around semantics and philosophy, because unlimited as a whole, as a concept, does not exist anywhere, because there is always a constraint, and either the constraint is time, because it's not an unlimited package because it runs out after 30 days. So there is a limitation, 30 days. There is another limitation as well, the dimension of the pipe, so the bandwidth. So let's take the theoretical. We offer 4 megabits, so I know the calculation with 4 megabits by heart. So bear with me. I can multiply by 2. So let's take the Safaricom bronze package right now. It's
no, let's go with 4.
No.
Let's go with 4. Let's go with the
no. Let's go with 8. Because Safaricom fair usage policy is the model here, right? So
yes,
8 megabits per second. If you were to max it out, so let's say, for argument's sake, that there is a tech-savvy hustler that does torrenting, and he's because he runs a DVD shop, and we both know the concept and the model quite intimately. So is torrenting like a lunatic on a 24/7, 365 basis? If you have 8 megabits per second and he has got it maxed out, 24/7 for 30 days straight, this person will consume 2.6 terabytes of data. Because if you do 8 megabits per second times 60 seconds times 60 minutes times 24 hours times 30 days, divide by 8 to go from megabits to megabytes, you will end up, I've done the math, 2.6 terabytes. Now, one could argue 500 gigabytes is much less than 2.6 terabytes. But if you and I use our internet connection in the house, and during the day we do Zoom calls from 9 to 6, and in the evening we Netflix, again, probably a shared connection because we use the password of our neighbors and we split the cost. and we Netflix from 7 to 11. And in the meantime, there is someone else in the house that also does some YouTube and whatnot. We will probably use, on average, 300 gigabytes per month. So 500. So unlimited doesn't exist, because even forget about the fair usage policy. The limitation is 30 days. After 30 days, it stops. So there is a limitation. There is a second limitation. The dimension of the pipe maxes it out at 2.6 terabytes. So what is unlimited? It's everyone's interpretation of unlimited. And I get it. I mean, again, I am a consumer as well, and I'm a human being, and I use my brain and interpretation in a certain way. Would I feel lied to? I can see the use case. But again, say, if you know that 80% of the people will never hit that threshold, they will never ever get to 500 gigabytes, no matter what they do, then it's not really a limitation now, isn't it? Then it's still unlimited, because I can do whatever it is that I want without being constrained whatsoever. So it's
okay. Yeah, I totally with that.
There's two sides to every coin, for that matter.
Yeah, when you say it like that, it actually makes a lot of sense. Like there's yes, there is a limit because you're trying to use resources, and we don't have anything like unlimited resources. And there's something that you also mentioned, that the ISPs, like you know your users, you know what kind of a consumption they can be able to do. Something that also came up was, why then not identify these users and sort of create a punishment kind of for those specific users? Would that be too much for the companies? Would that be too much for the ISPs?
But that's what they're doing.
But then, okay,
that is exactly what they are doing. So again, I am absolutely convinced that the majority of the home internet users will never hit that threshold. So they will continue to use their internet the same way as they did before, happily, and it will feel to them as if it was unlimited, because it was unlimited yesterday, and I'm still doing the same thing today, so it's equally unlimited. Nothing has changed fundamentally, just some wording. I mean, guess what? WhatsApp, Facebook, they change their end user license agreement all the time. Does it really change your behavior using WhatsApp and Facebook? Probably not. So it is the same. It's the same thing as you did yesterday, day before yesterday, etc. So the people who are punished, to use your words, the people that after 20 days hit, or after 10 days hit the 500 gigabytes and therefore get throttled, I am fairly certain they will call Safaricom, or Safaricom will call them and say, hey, I see that you've hit your threshold. Yeah. What can we do about it? Well, step one is that maybe you move from the bronze to the silver package, so you can actually double your fair usage policy. Or you may want to have a look what it is that you are doing. Is it a single household, or are you cutting things up? And possibly you want to migrate to one of our business packages.
Okay, I think you've cleared the air.
Well, I'm glad that I could, and that you have allowed me to. And again, so just to put things in perspective, I do get where people, I understand that people may feel disadvantaged. I understand that people may feel punished, but in the Netherlands we've got an expression that is, don't scream before you actually get hit. So I would strongly advise to look at the bigger picture and actually see where everything is coming from, because I don't think in this case it is necessarily Safaricom being the big bad wolf, and because they're the dominant player, they're trying to impose bad things onto us, and therefore maximizing their profits and squeezing a coin out of the machinari. No, I think in this case, in all fairness, I have as many doubts about their motto as you do, probably, with their transparent, honest, and simple. I think in this case they have actually been very, very transparent, because guess what? The other ISPs also have fair usage policies in place. It's just that they choose to be vague and wishy-washy about it.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I use one of the other players and I experienced that. Yeah, so I see where you're coming from. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, DJ. I mean, this has been quite insightful, and just learning and having a bit of understanding of how they introduce FUP, because it has been quite confusing, as you can imagine. Kenyans have been trying to understand it, and I believe this is going to be provide that perspective from the ISPs and also to show consumers that you cannot hit 500 gigs. I mean, averagely, you'll get most users will use about 10 gigs a day. So that's fairly enough. So meaning a month, that's around 300. Basically, your math was actually accurate. Yeah. So thank you one more time. I don't know if you have something else. So for guys, maybe you want, what will be your last message to people and people who want to use POA Internet?
So for people that want to use POA Internet, they can reach us through our customer service channel. We've got a Facebook page, we've got a Twitter handle, we've got something on IG, as well as a WhatsApp for business number, 0730-762-762. So that is 0730 and then POA. If you do 762 letters, it becomes POA. There they can update you on the latest coverage footprint, so where we actually have coverage, and then we can see if we can be of service for the people that are interested. We have a 4 megabits per second home internet subscription that runs for 30 days that gives you 4 megabits per second. And at this point in time, we don't have any fair usage policy. It is unlimited. Absolutely.
That's about 1.3 TB.
Very accurate, Dixon. Yes.
Thank you so much, DJ. I really enjoyed speaking to you, and I was really happy that you accepted this under very short notice. And I was really happy that you said yes, and you actually came and shared with us your knowledge.
It has been absolutely my pleasure, Dixon, and it's good to circle back to you after so many years. It's nice to see your face and hear your voice again. Pleasure.
Thank you so much. And we had a long chat with him. The extra conversation that I had with him regarding his career switch, the move to Kenya, his involvement with Equitel, and so much more will be available on Acute Premium.
Subscribe to this and other shows on acute.co.ke. You can also find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and other online podcast platforms.
Thanks a lot for everyone who made this production a success. To Mr. DJ, thank you so much for your insights and your time. And also, we appreciate Lawyers Hub for the amazing work that you are doing.